see a lot of drills going on. And so, again, these guys just now coming onto the field to start stretching and getting ready for the individual drills as well as the team drills. A couple of news of note. Noah Fant will be, I don't know if he's going to practice today. He passed his physical, so he'll either be on the field today or tomorrow, and that's good because there was obviously concern with Will Dissly, Noah Fant. We were a little thin at tight end just for practice, but we have one of the best groups out there with the three tight ends we had from last year. For those who are out at practice, you see here our first-round draft picks there, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I keep wanting to call him Amma. By the third game, I'll have Ba. But he's been impressive. I'll tell you who else has been really impressive, and everybody's been talking about him, and it's D. Eskridge, and really focused on him last Friday. His separation, his confidence, his hand placement right now, it looks different. I mean, we got to get it on the field, Ray. But for the most part, everything they've been saying about him all off season has been impressive. A couple of notes as well that from training camp last Friday or this past Friday was Michael Jackson really came on this last year and out of nowhere. There's a couple guys, obviously Geno Smith and then Michael Jackson last year were really just positive guys that we just weren't expecting to get that much play and great play from them. He and DK Metcalf, man, they went at it Friday. I mean, there were some good battles, and what you're really getting from Michael Jackson now with his second year. He's still the starter. I mean, Witherspoon, Devin Witherspoon's our number 5 pick, the first pick, for us this year. Yeah, he's going to get every opportunity to start. Michael Jackson's looked phenomenal. But, just your thoughts on Michael and DK, some of those matchups.
Yeah, I loved it. Like, I was on that end of the field yesterday where I think Michael broke up a pass in the end zone and then he got called for the interference. On the next call, they were throwing it deep to the left corner in the end zone. But I like that dudes will step up and challenge each other that way because, to me, that's how you get better. And if you look at Michael Jackson, that's kind of how the year went. The more he played, the better he got, the more comfortable he felt challenging folks. I know he didn't get his interception, I think, to later in the season, like down the stretch there, but he got his turnover in. But the Michael Jackson song, Smooth Criminal, like that's what he is. He's just really smooth that way. And I love it when dudes will go, I'm going to go line up against the best dude that's here, and then we're going to go to work. And then for him, you have 2 of the top receivers in the league on this team that you can line up across from and get those reps in. Like, Tyler is great with route running. DK is a different beast because he's a bigger, stronger, faster dude. So you get a little bit of both of those. And for Mike Jackson to be able to keep perfecting his craft by taking on those challenges every day can do nothing but elevate the secondary.
You're looking at the guys stretching right now. We just saw Tyler Lockett, and I could argue that our wide receiver crew and our defensive backs, you combine those two groups is the best in the NFL right now. The depth we have in the secondary that, we talked about a little bit on Friday. We got Devin Witherspoon was back practice yesterday. He has just a outside, but Pete Carroll said he's going to work a lot at the nickel and he's going to compete with Kobe Bryant on that, who was our starting nickel last year, and then you throw in Trey Brown. So you had Trey Brown was, I believe, was matched with Michael Jackson on Friday, and then you had Witherspoon and I can't remember who the other person was. I think it was Artie Burns. So again, Artie Burns, another guy who's been productive. And you see Devin Witherspoon got him signed, which it's so important now that these guys are in early. You don't see holdouts very often. And the reason why that's so critical, it's just not enough practices. Next Thursday, they're going to have the Hall of Fame bowl game already. And, and then the Seahawks I think we're 2 weeks away still before we play. Is that right, NASA? The 10th, August 10th. So, they got a little bit of time, but, they get one practice a day. That's it. They get a lot of film study. A lot of it's just keeping their bodies recovered. You got blitz out there, getting everybody fired up. And the one thing you see right now is energy. You see the coaches. They just don't have enough time, man. So you go from stage to stage and drill to drill. And, a lot of people say, well, what are they doing here? They're working on their footwork. They're working on their craft, man. It's not just about going and beating up on people.
Right.
It's not just going and running the play. I've got to, things break down. And so I got to be skilled at all types of things, particularly change of direction.
Well, the thing I like about when they throw these, they blow the horn and they do these drills is like you steal reps. right? Because a lot of times there's a lull in practice where you're moving from one drill to the next drill or whatever. And in these little moments, as small as they are and insignificant as people may think they are, you're still in reps, though. You're still in some footwork. You're still in some lateral movement. You're still in some opportunity for the team to have energy together. So I like that part of practice, that they have these little injections of energy and still in reps in those opportunities.
Yeah, and the guys who get a workout as well, just the ball boys. You know, I mean, honestly, I mean, they got to get those bags. There's a lot of pressure, and you see here Derek Young, another kid who's, you know, special athlete that's going to push for playing time this year. You know, 6'2", 225. I'm going to say 225, rounded up a little bit. He looked good last year, and so again, just to add into all this depth in here, you know, you got 4 guys who are, you know, top 2 draft picks. You know, and Tyler Lockett, DK, obviously D. Eskridge, and then JSN. And now you throw in Young too. I mean, that's just a deep, athletic, young and with experience as well. And now you're starting to see the big boys, some of the defensive linemen. They're defensive linemen doing some offensive drills. Because sometimes, what do we have to do? Well, we got to be the scout team.
You have to be the scout
other.
team, exactly. And like you know, I don't know if everyone knows how the practice are designed, but like you have these individual periods where you have each position group is doing their warm up or doing their techniques together. See D. Eskridge right there with the receivers getting warmed up and running routes and things. And what we saw with the defensive line was just kind of getting their hands working, getting in and out of their stance. You know, you have another person across from them that's pretending to be an offensive line to kind of give them the look. So that happens a lot in these individual periods because you're really concentrating on particular things. You know, a particular.
Jaron Reed right there, who we got back this year. Yeah, buddy, we missed him, and they've said he's going to be playing some nose tackle right there in that against the center, and he can play any position.
Right.
He already said, he goes, look, I can play the 3 technique. I slide me out wide. It doesn't matter. I think exceptional nose because it's going to make people have really say, I got to also protect against the pass on this guy. Whereas, you know, Al Wood didn't have to worry that much. You know, Al was a 2-gap kind of guy. He was going to get his hands on you. Great run stopper along the way. Jaron Reed certainly capable. What you're seeing here, but the wide receivers are in blue today, and the defensive backs, the defenses on the white jerseys. So they'll run drills together also throughout the day because, you know, you've got to get work on jamming these guys. Sometimes just running with them as well to see where they may make a break along the way. And so we're looking again, the defensive linemen, the defensive linemen, offensive linemen get to learn what the other positions are like by being a scout team for them. Just your thoughts on Jaron Reed. I mean, you've seen him in the past, you know, going into this, more than capable of being a nose?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I can remember is when you had Frank Clark on the end, on the outside, and you had Jaron Reed at tackle, and they were playing beside each other. It made it really hard to figure out who you're going to double team, who you're going to, you know. And so as an offensive line, when you have more dudes that can rush the quarterback and they can create more one-on-one opportunities for guys that are skilled at rushing the quarterback, it puts a lot of pressure on the offensive line because now you can't slide guys. You know, if you can create a situation where both guards in the center are covered and Jaron Reed is rushing the quarterback over the center, you can't find another dude to help him. You know, or even if you put him at one of the guard spots, you know, you can't slide the tackle down. So you try to create, a lot of times in these 5-man fronts, you're trying to create all these one-on-one matchups so that you hopefully have the advantage in either the run game or the passing game with your guys on defense. And we talked about the depth at rushing the quarterback a little bit the other day with Mafe, who I had forgotten about, with the new guy Hall, with Ochena, with Darrell Taylor. Like, there's a lot of dudes that can get after the quarterback. Even talking about having the 2 high safeties and bringing Jamal down into the block to rush the quarterback. So it's they have a lot of dudes that can get after the quarterback. So the more one-on-one matchups they create, the more pressure they're going to put on an offensive line.
Yeah, we're in preseason form here. You see Darrell Taylor, they're number 52, and you know their work on get-offs. A lot of times, an individual coach will just grab 1 or 2 guys if they want to work on something that they saw on film from the last few days. You know, again, sometimes it doesn't look like they're doing much, but sometimes it's just hand placement. You know, it's trying to use an analogy for it, but you know, maybe you know, somebody who's working on their golf swing. You know, you're not trying to go full speed all the time. You're looking at alignment, you know, and you know how you're taking club away. It's same thing here. They're on them too. I mean,
Right.
I was listening to some of the coaches. If their hand isn't in the right, I mean, within an inch of being in the right spot, they're being, drilled on that. And after a while, they get upset with them if they're not, don't start picking it up. So
Yeah. Well, Paul, like playing in the secondary, like the smallest little mistake or misalignment you have can end up being a huge, gigantic play. So the same thing happens, along the offensive and defensive line. You can, like for an offensive lineman, if I have my head down the middle versus the outside shoulder, it can make the biggest difference in whether we're going to capture the outside or the defender's going to make the running back cut it back to the inside, back to the bad guys. So all these little drills that they're doing, whether they're doing it full speed or they're walking it through or they're doing it 3/4 speed, there is an emphasis on something, and you're trying to really lock that in so you're really precise with it.
you see the blue coned heads on the helmets there. That's not their helmet. It's just added protection. They're very aware, obviously, of concussion. So particularly defensive linemen, offensive linemen, anybody who's going to get and smack early around the line of scrimmage, they want them wearing those helmets. And it just, takes away some of the pounding and really opportunities for concussions. You don't always see them on the secondary and wide receivers because they're not banging all the time. They really emphasize and practice not hitting each other, keep guys up. They work on tackling. You'll see some of these drills coming up here where they're going to work on tackling, but they're going to work on it with pads. We call them dummy pads along the way. At this stage, man, you better know how to tackle when you get to the NFL.
Right.
And while they're working on it on film, they've just gotten so much better at more the mental part of tackling.
Mm-hmm.
You eventually got to do it.
Right.
That's what preseason's for. But Pete and his staff and really the NFL, they've done such a good job of trying to mitigate those head collisions along the way.
And it seems like the Seahawks each year, they've gotten better and better at getting good tackling earlier in the season, because there was a time where it was kind of lagging and then they kind of caught up to it, and they have to have a couple extra practice where they're focusing on tackling and things. And it's really hard to go from tackling like this round donut looking thing that's rolling down the field to tackling Derrick Henry. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, so you have to eventually put your face in the fan to make the tackle. And so you don't get to do that in camp. Like when you and I played, like we had our thud session where you kind of thud a dude up, you don't take him down. But we also had some live drills where guys got taken to the ground, so you kind of learn how to tackle, learn how to finish blocks. Nowadays, you kind of learn in this kind of controlled environment, and then in those preseason games, you got to really turn it on to make sure that you can execute, how they're teaching you to tackle.
You just saw Bobby Wagner there earlier with Diggs. Bobby, you saw him with a sweatshirt and a hoodie on and no helmet. The one thing Pete does is right there, Bobby Wagner, good to see him back. He gives his veterans a rest. Last year he played a ton of snaps again, and he's done that his whole career. You see right here, he had one of the best seasons he ever had statistically, 6 sacks. That's a lot because of what the Rams did in the scheme. They would isolate him often against the center. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious if we do that. I've always thought that was a strength of him. He's so strong. I mean, he's still so fast, he's smart. But you can see him messing around with Coach Hurt there. And I think that's Coach Hurt, right? Yeah. It is. And
the
so
biggest shoulders known to man.
Yeah, that's not a drill. That's just them having some fun. And look, they take care of the veterans along the way. I'm going to transition a little bit on you. There's a lot of great competitions going on right now, particularly in the secondary. I think at linebacker as well. We'll see who's all the roles at linebacker and defensive line. And the nice thing, it's not like, oh God, I hope this guy becomes the starter, or I hope this guy, plays to his ability. I mean, we got a lot of depth.
Right.
It's just going to be, all right, who's the best one there? I mean, that's going to be fun. But it's the center rotation right now going on. They started initially with Evan Brown with the ones. Mm-hmm. Then they moved Oluwatimi to the number ones. Now they've just been rotating them either with ones and twos. And Geno Smith said yesterday, actually I think it was Friday when he said, I don't notice a difference. They're both doing a great job because I'm focusing on what I got to do. He goes, but, from calls and them, doing their job because they've both been spectacular. So, just going into I listened to Evan Brown. I was doing a show with 710 Cairo with Dave Wyman and Bob Stelton. And they had Evan Brown come over and interview. Man, he just sounds unbelievably intelligent and really confident, But a cool. He just seems like a cool dude.
Yeah.
And then you got Oluwatimi, who's why he's. I'll ask you later on that one because I want to get into that and why he would have dropped so far in that position. But just your thoughts about going into that competition.
Yeah. So when I've watched them both through the mini camps, and then I've watched them quite a bit the other day, just watching how they call the huddle, how did the command they have at the line of scrimmage, how they communicate, whether they're loud or hand pointers, or do they panic when the clock is running down. And so from what I can see, and it's really hard to judge offensive line stuff when there's no pads, but from what I can see, they're both very good communicators. I think Geno likes that, and I think that's what this offense really leans on the centers to be really good communicators along the offensive line. So I think they have that piece covered. To me, it's going to come down to which one of these two guys can do two things. One, be consistent, and two, finish blocks. Like in the past, that has been one of the issues, especially in the running game for our centers, is they've been a little bit undersized. So sometimes you see them go up to block a linebacker, and they're getting knocked back into the hole. So now the running back has to make an adjustment because his own lineman is coming back at him. So I think once they get the pads on, I think that's where you're going to maybe see some separation between whichever one can be consistent, like in executing their blocks, and then who can finish blocks in a game to kind of really make the difference. Because right now, I feel like they're kind of even because you don't have the pads on. The communications is all good. I remember talking to Olu during the mini camps, and he missed one. There was an audible that he missed, and it was like killing him that he missed it. I'm like, oh, it's okay, dude. Like, you've been in camp for like 3 days, And so you can tell
they've
that
transitioned to special teams. You saw that earlier with a lot of the white jersey.
Be the separating thing between the two of them.
We'll talk more about the offensive line. And right now in practice, for the most part, they've transitioned to special teams. You saw that earlier with a lot of the white jersey, a lot of defensive backs and linebackers, and then they were huddled up together. And they'll bring a lot of the skill players are on special teams. For those who
there's
don't,
an offensive lineman on there?
We're going to get to at the end where they have field goal and stuff later. But then there's guys like right now, what's going on? You're seeing DK Metcalf, some of the wide receivers. They may not be involved in the special teams, so they're going to continue to work on, some of their releases, some of their, hot routes, whatever it may be, hot route, if there's a blitz or something, and just getting some time. And nothing crazy, kind of like hitting just wedges, warming up, for golf. I don't know. I got golf in my mind at summertime along the way. But then they'll transition to more, which unfortunately we won't get to see a bunch of that. We'll cut before they get to the team. It's kind of an NFL policy for that we don't get to show all those things live, but give you an opportunity to see what they're doing, warming up, getting ready for the first preseason game. And again, the greatest setting in the NFL.
People really understand is how difficult it is to come in and play that position as a rookie, because you're playing against dudes, and they played against some really good pass rushers that have every trick in their bag, and it takes a while to learn all the different tricks, all the double moves, or the hand fighting, or whether a guy's going from speed to power, power to speed, like however they do it. And it takes a while to kind of get all that, pull all of that together. And the thing that to me that was the most impressive about these two tackles is that they did it without much help. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of times where they were getting chips from the tight end or from the running back. And I've said this before, like, as well as I thought I was playing as a rookie, I would still look back there for James Jones and be like, hey, Derek Thomas is right here. Like, can you, take a little – can you help me out a little bit? Like, you know what I'm saying? So, those chips come in handy. And there weren't a whole lot of games where – even in a game where they were getting chips, it was like maybe an occasional one. It wasn't like part of the game plan. And so to me, that's impressive. If you look at Charles Cross, just the way he looks a little leaner to coming to this camp. I think one of the things that he really needed to work on is in the running game with his pad level and being a little bit more violent with his hands. He's a very smooth pass blocker. His lateral movement is great. His footwork is great. His hand placement is good. But in the run game, I think is where he can kind of elevate his game. game, just being a little bit more aggressive with his hands and pad level. If I look at Abe Lucas, man, Abe Lucas is the force multiplier to me, dude. Like, and as soon as he steps on the field, I remember last year at this time watching him just hit the with no pads on, hitting the bags that, when you're holding the bag, like these guys are doing. And I was thinking to myself, if I'm holding the bag, I may have to have a talk with Abe Lucas, because he's hitting the bags really hard. Like, he has some heavy hands, and I'm just like, dude, like, hey, we're just getting started. Can you not hit the bag so hard? And but this dude brings that type of attitude to it. And to me, the part where I think he needs to improve on is working in space, because a lot of guys will get him in pass protection. If you try to overpower him, it's not going to work. The dude is unbelievably strong. But if you can get him in space and make him have to move his feet, then that's kind of where teams were getting him down the stretch a little bit. And so just working on that lateral movement, being comfortable playing in space like that, these two tackles have a chance, if they can afford them all, because the prices get crazy these days, to be tackles here for the next 10 years. I mean, literally to be the guys, and they both have Pro Bowl, all-pro type of talent.
Well, they're going to be around here for a while.
Yeah.
Because Charles Cross he was a first-round draft pick, so we got him basically for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Abe, because he's not a first-round pick, I think then he is up for contract after 4 years, but they're going to be here a while. Let me ask you about Charles Cross. Yeah. You mentioned, he needs to get maybe a little stronger against the run, but how much of that is you just starting to get more mass? Because he came out, and you go look at him, you go, he looks like a young man, right? I mean, I just saw your son come in here, and I hadn't seen him in a year, and he's bigger than you are now, and he's going to be a freshman at Portland State this year. It takes time to get mass, so, I mean, I would think that's going to help him in the run game.
Yeah, it will, because it'll give him more confidence that he has the strength and the power to do that. Like, he has a bigger lower body. And his upper body was like, I don't know how to say it other than it was a little softer last year. But, like, if you look at him now, he looks a little more lean, like he's put a lot more time in the weight room. I remember in college, like, as I got stronger and got a little more mass, you get more confident in what you're capable of doing. So even all the athleticism and the skill and all that stuff you have gets elevated because your confidence in it is elevated. And so there's a few times in the run game last year where he was playing tall, kind of just reaching out and grabbing folks and not really delivering a blow in the run game. I expect that to be a little bit different. Even just watching him without pads the other day, he just seemed to be a little bit more confident in how he wanted to go about being a run blocker. And I think that's a big deal too.
When you look at bringing back Damian Lewis, who had a good year, I thought, again, Phil Haynes 2 years ago, I've said this a few times, there was about 3 or 4 games at the end of the year where I thought he played the best of any of our offensive linemen.
Yep.
He played well last year, but, he didn't get all the starts, which means that, he's still got room to go. And then again, we throw in, Evan Brown and Olatemi. Does this have a chance to be the best offensive lineman? Because 2012, 13, 14, that was a pretty good offensive line.
Yeah. I think they have all the talent to do it. To me, just looking at the notes today, I was really surprised that Damian Lewis is only in his 4th year, and he's like the veteran on that line. So it's a really young offensive line, and for me,
it's a really good signing. I mean, he's comfortable. We know where the talent is. This is the first time he's had the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row since he's come into the league, and he doesn't want to sit by any means. But what he wants to do is continue to learn, because he's going to be a starter in this league. Whether it's here or somewhere else, more than likely it's somewhere else, because, Gino's the guy now. That, again, I don't know if that's trade bait at some point. You need 2 good quarterbacks. It's hard to keep them all healthy. But let me just throw some of the other offensive linemen that are out there. One is Anthony Bradford, the LSU guard that we drafted, I think, in the 4th round. I don't know if you've had a chance to see him, but boy, I tell you what, I liked him on film at LSU.
Well, the cool thing I like about him is that at LSU, he played right tackle, he played left tackle, and he played right and left guard. And so he has the athleticism to play all those different positions. And he's more of a DJ Fluker type player. Like I won't say that he has like all the greatest technique, but he's so big he just kind of swallows dudes up, because of his size and his mass. And so I think he's getting some more reps here. I don't know if he's one of those dudes that's I don't know if he's gonna be a real challenge for Phil unless Phil is injured and stuff. But hopefully throughout the season, they can let him steal some reps here and there to kind of get to play in some real plays. But I think he has the makings of being a very good swing guard that can play either guard. And then we also have Jake Curran.
Yep.
And like I keep saying, like there's some unbelievable athletes on this offensive line, but if you had to rate them as football players, Jake would rise to up near the top of that because he is just a football player. Give him some shoulder pads, give him a helmet, tell him to block the dude in front of him. Don't worry about where his feet are going or his technique. He's going to get the job done, and it's usually a big block that kind of springs one of our longer runs.
Yeah, time will tell if this would be the best offensive line we've had. I'm optimistic it will be. But I feel like it's the most depth we've had.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I would be nervous if you lose any of your starting offensive tackles. I mean, there's a drop there. But we have some guys at guard. I feel like there's 4 or 5 guys that you can still plug and play in there. You got Joey Hunt that we signed again. We're familiar with Joey.
Right.
Joey's smaller, but again, another really smart guy. So, if the 2 centers for whatever reason don't develop that we're hoping, you've got something there. If one of the other guards all of a sudden if Bradford really shined because he and Phil Haynes look like they're going to be competing on the right side there. I mean, we stuck Damian Lewis at center in an emergency role. I always thought that was intriguing. I mean, to learn the snap, I mean, wouldn't that be the toughest transition for somebody?
Yeah,
to go
absolutely.
from a guard to center.
Yeah, because you have to start the block with one hand, and that's always difficult to do. But the other thing too is that I think it was the preseason game against the Raiders. Phil Haynes was actually scheduled to play center in that game, but he got sick before the game started, so he never took reps. So he's actually practiced at center too. And then if you look at what's the dude we just signed?
Oh, Evans.
Evans also played guard in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I know they've brought him here to play center. So you have a lot of guard center type dudes that create depth within those 3 positions.
They were just showing number 55, which is Dremont Jones, the guy we signed from Denver and a free agent. And you're going to love him because we can play him in so many positions. You play him at nose, oh, my goodness, in passing situations. But he's wearing 55, and I was watching him on a drill, and he looked like Frank Clark, man, that explosiveness. And Frank's one of the, still to this day, had one of the quickest get-offs out there. He was a little undersized for a defensive end, but we knew he could get after the quarterback. See Doug Baldwin right there, and Doug, I've said forever, ever since Doug left, it's hurt our third down conversion. He was the best slot you couldn't jam him. He made people look stupid.
Yes.
He broke ankles at times, and I mean, all pro guys. Best guy I've ever seen, escape a jam in that slot. And again, you got to have that. And so now, we got some guys, man. It's again.
I know that third down stat is always the turbo stat. Turbo brings that up every year. That's his stat that we need to improve on. But yeah, I think too. I know we're going to get to this. That we're talking about how deep the secondary is with the safeties and the corners. If you think about the dudes that just catch the ball and you include the tight ends, it makes the receiving core even deeper. You know what I'm saying? Because all 3 of those dudes, Disley and Fant and Parkinson. He was a guy that was leading, coming from one side to the other, leading up into the hole as a lead blocker. And so, and the thing that I love about those 3 tight ends is they're willing blockers. Because people always say, like, hey, can this tight end block? Sometimes it's not a matter if you can block. It's whether you're willing to do it, and they are.
So show this drill going on right now. They're working a double team, and it looks like 73. Sorry, guys, I got to get numbers here. So that is, I'm not sure, Roderick Perry II. But what they're working on is on a double team. And what you don't want to happen is you don't want to get turned. But what they're working on is on a double team. And what you you don't want to happen is you don't want to get turned quick, right? So let's watch it. Why don't you talk about that one there?
Yeah, so this would be a typical zone blocking scheme for the guys that are playing offense. And so what you're trying to do is when you're the initiator of the contact for the guy that's setting the double team, which is the defender was there, you want to defeat that guy. Because a lot of times you'll see guys try to take on both dudes, and that's when you either get the defender gets washed away, or they give up the corner, and it makes it a little bit tougher on the second level defenders. So in this play right here, they were trying to get the 73 to get the offensive tackle's shoulders turned towards the sideline. And then that way you're not getting vertical push on them.
Yeah, you can't get cut off quick, and then you don't want the other offensive lineman to get a release to the linebackers quick. So that nose, you're trying to defeat that first guy, and because if the other guy leaves early, then you can make the tackle.
Right.
And so again, kind of hard to explain without seeing it all. But again, these are just things that are. They've got to work on, and that is a hard position, you know, because then all of a sudden they set you up, and then all of a sudden they crack back on you with the guard blocking down rather than, them zoning off, and so you're looking for traps and ice
or it could be play action pass, So that's one of the things that Shane Waldron was doing last year. There were run plays and pass plays where the first 2 or 3 steps looked all the same, and so that's what you're trying. That's the game you're trying to play against defensive linemen when it comes to throwing the ball and play action. You want everything to look the same. You don't want your shoulder pass to come up too high when it's play action pass and they read the pass too soon, and you want to stay low. And so with the defensive lineman, you're trying to read that double team, and all of a sudden it's a pass. Now you got to get into your pass rush move. So it's a lot to learn, little things, the little cat and mouse games inside the trenches and all over the field that these guys are trying to learn. And sometimes you got to break it down like that so you can learn one little piece of it at a time. You
just saw number 92, Tyreek Smith, a guy they're pretty high on. He didn't play last year, got a little hurt, guy out of Ohio State. They're high on him. He's got to go out and prove it. But just another linebacker. We were talking about linebackers 3 days ago, and maybe that was the least deep of any of the groups. And then we started going through all the names, and we went, man, that's deep as I can ever remember. So let's transition a little bit. We talked about tight ends, and last year the combined tight ends, talking about Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and Colby Parkinson. I like all 3 of these guys. First of all, they're all really smart guys. They're all athletic. Colby Parkinson has become quite the golfer, too. I know his wife is a golfer, and so I've been following him on social media. He's been in Pebble Beach and Bandon Dunes. I'm getting kind of jealous he didn't ask me to go with him. But combined, they had 109 receptions for over 1,000 yards, 1,150 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think that's pretty much a record for the Seahawks at tight end.